In this video, we are seeking to address whether China will achieve the Sustainable Development Goal of the eradication of extreme poverty by 2030. In 2020, the Chinese government declared it had already met its deadline for eliminating extreme poverty. Eradicating extreme poverty is the first of the Sustainable Development Goals, and we are going to critique the argument that China is on track to achieve the elimination of extreme poverty by 2030. Analyse their progress and address areas of weaknesses such as the disparity in living standards between urban populations and rural communities and that of ethnic minorities.
The prevailing narrative given by China and the World Bank is that China has been at the epicenter of the fight in the last century to eradicate poverty. They are touted as the largest success story in the World Bank's 2020 development report, namely the statistic that in 1981, 88.1% of Chinese people lived below the poverty line, and by 2019 that figure had been reduced to 0.2%, suggesting that 800 million people have been lifted out of extreme poverty according to its definition. China's success in eradicating poverty is constantly attributed to an integration into the world economy and foreign direct investment. For example, Apple's electronics supplied by Foxconn. However, the World Bank statistics given support this are politically motivated to support modernization theory and the neoliberal mode of production. Depending on the time period and the definition of poverty, the reduction in the count of poor people in China differs by 400 to 500 million people. China's own reports on poverty only track rural areas to support the narrative that poverty only exists rurally, despite 24.7% of the urban population living in slums. Furthermore, when poverty is measured relationally, using 50% of the median income as poverty, by this definition, Appleton's 2010 study finds a rising relative poverty rate in urban China over 1988 to 2012, from 3% to 10%. Foxconn, that has allowed China's growth in the economy, also has some of the worst records for working conditions. 75% to 80% are rural to urban female migrants living on low enough wages that their 60-hour week, which is already above the International Labour Organization's upper limit recommendation of 48 hours, is still not enough to subsist, with over half of the workers needing to work 90 hours of overtime a month as their wages couldn't afford basic necessities where they live. China's record on poverty is defined deliberately as it ignores the negative side of modernization faced by their citizens.
Over the last 50 years, China has seen a drastic reduction in poverty, which has mainly been focused in urban centers like Beijing and Shanghai. However, often in this economic development, the 40% of China's population that live in rural areas are left behind. Inequality in China is increasing between the richer urban areas and the poorer rural areas. Forbes pointed to a study from a Chinese university that claims that the Gini coefficient, a commonly used statistical measurement of inequality, was 0.6 in 2014. This is extremely high, with the highest rating at the time being 0.63 in Lesotho. It was further claimed that the combined income of households in eastern coastal regions was 2.7 times that of households in inland regions. A study in 2016 found that 40% of China's rural land is being impacted by land degradation, such as soil erosion, salinization, and desertification. This is a threat to the food security of rural areas in China. When many people rely on the agricultural industry, it is much harder for these areas to be brought out of poverty. Furthermore, there is a risk of poor people being left behind when food is not secure, making it harder for China to reach the goal of eradicating extreme poverty.
China has also shown disparities in tackling poverty rates by ethnicity. From 2001 to 2009, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, the proportion of those in poverty in the 8 provinces in China with the largest ethnic minority groups increased from 34% to 40.4%. This suggests difficulties in collaboration with the majority Han Chinese government amongst minority ethnic groups. To achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, this will need to be addressed to ensure ethnic minorities do not remain impoverished. Information on poverty rates is largely reliant on figures compiled by Chinese authorities. A 2019 UN Development Report on Inequality ranked the quality and transparency of data available to measure wealth and income in China at a 4 out of a scale between 0 and 20. In comparison, the UK and USA scored at 14. This is indicative of the challenge in assessing the poverty rates in China due to lack of data. To avoid the issue of a lack of quality data on wealth and income, open sources can be used to assess poverty rates. For instance, one study has mapped the luminosity of regions in China at night from space to extrapolate the poverty rates in different regions. This study demonstrates visually the disparity in poverty rates by ethnicity in China. Provinces with a higher proportion of ethnic minorities, such as Yunnan, Hunan, and Xizang, have lower luminosity, reflecting existing figures around poverty rates.
China's economic growth can be attributed to hyper-specialized, labor-intensive modes of production such as electronics manufacturing for Apple being made by Chinese firms like Pegatron and Foxconn, potentially providing a model for other developing countries to follow. In order to consolidate rising quality of life in China, we would recommend that China follow the example of Vietnam, which, according to the 2020 World Bank Development Report, saw working conditions improve when companies participated in the International Labour Organization, the International Finance Corporation Better Work Programme. However, this is necessary but not sufficient for improved poverty reduction, as it should be implemented alongside complementary government action to publicly disclose the names of firms that fail to meet key labour standards. In order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal of eradication of extreme poverty, we would therefore recommend that the Chinese government implement and extend these measures to ensure the rights of ethnic minorities are protected, and to equalise the standard of living between rural and urban communities. Thank you for listening.